Hey everyone, Richard from Digital Foundry here, and this is a small glimpse of how gaming looks on the 2015 Apple TV. We've already reviewed the product as a media streaming device and offered some initial insight on the machine as a games console, but here we're going to be focusing exclusively on gameplay. And this is probably my favourite game on the Apple TV right now, and coincidentally it's also my favourite title on the competing Shield Android TV. This is Geometry Wars 3, a console port, and as you can see it's actually rather beautiful. Apple TV offers a full 1080p presentation and it's operating at a mostly locked 60 frames per second. It's a really good game, but to get the best out of the experience, well, it's fair to say that the bundled Apple TV remote just isn't up to the task. This is a twin stick shooter made to work with Apple's remote, and the way they've done this is pretty straightforward. The touch-sensitive trackpad controls the movement of the ship, while the shooting is all taken care of for you. It's pretty much the only solution that would have worked with the remote, but the core essence of the game is compromised, and in actual fact, even moving about with the trackpad is very imprecise. Of course, traditional pad support is available, but buying such a controller adds significantly to the base cost. But in terms of visual features and performance, it's 1080p 60, and that's not bad at all. It's a really nice start. Next up, let's take a look at Beat Sports, the Harmonix created tentpole game for the Apple TV. Sort of like Wii Sports meets rhythm action. You can see straight away that despite the pared back visuals, the performance here is very choppy. There's some attempt at a 30 FPS frame rate, but the frame delivery is all over the place. Frame pacing issues are common to a great many mobile games, but Apple TV is supposed to be a console, and you can see that the kind of consistency we want from a console experience just isn't really here. The readout says 30 FPS for the most part, but the inconsistency makes it feel lower. Also, Beat Sports highlights an issue you'll be facing on several titles: extra downloading. We suspect that this is all about making the most of the very limited flash storage available on the Apple TV. So, several games are often loaded piecemeal, resulting in some frustrating pauses. Typically you won't be held up for long, but the bottom line is that NAND flash is extremely cheap these days. The base Apple TV comes with 32 gigs of memory, but 64 is a premium extra, and that's very disappointing bearing in mind that the base cost to Apple will be almost negligible. Despite being handled by a veteran console developer, Beat Sports is limited and predictable compared to the Nintendo titles it seeks to emulate. That's something of a surprise and a disappointment. Next up, let's take a quick look at Asphalt 8. It's a game that's notorious for its poor performance on mobile hardware. Now, on the Apple TV, you do get a native 1080p presentation, albeit with no anti-aliasing, but once again there are real problems sustaining that target 30 FPS with some frankly immense judder. Our frame time graph goes all the way up to 150 milliseconds here, but you'll note some areas where the game even manages to surpass that, and that's quite a feat. One thing we should say is that the controls work out fairly well here. Obviously there's a lack of feedback in the controls, but turning the remote onto its side and using motion control to steer is a fairly decent experience. But once again, check out the frame pacing issues here. Even when the game hits its target 30 FPS, there's a lot of stutter. A more successful showing is found in Galaxy on Fire, Manticore Rising. Again, we see a target 30 FPS, and while frame pacing still isn't solid, it's one of the better titles we've played. This game uses the old PS3 6-axis style of control. Essentially, you wave the Apple TV remote about in order to move the ship. Again, it's really imprecise, and getting those all-important lock-ons on the enemy ships isn't easy to say the least. There is proper pad support though, but without a traditional controller in the box, the take-up here is going to be minimal. Finally, let's take a look at some more traditional mobile fare. This is Crossy Road running at 1080p with a locked 60 FPS, but again no anti-aliasing. Due to the stylized nature of the visuals, it still holds up from an image quality perspective, and the silky smooth performance is indicative of the type of experience you'll get from less challenging games running on the Apple TV. But I have to say that swiping to move on the remote is extremely frustrating. Too often up registers as left or right, resulting in many needless deaths. Once again we have to question the Apple TV's effectiveness as a games machine if the basic interface supplied isn't up to scratch. And to round off, this is Rayman Adventures, a 2D game based on the UbiArts engine. Similar to other mobile outings for this character, running is automatically taken care of for you. Swiping in any given direction attacks while pressing the remote button jumps. Simple stuff really, but keeping precision movement down to a minimum actually works here. It's not the most technologically advanced game on the platform, but it is perhaps one of the most playable. Now, bearing in mind that we've seen the UbiArt tech operating flawlessly on much less capable technology, it's no surprise to see the engine run at a full 1080p 60 on the A8 chip, and it's worth remembering that many of the Apple TV's games are built with less capable chipsets in mind, meaning you should get decent performance. However, this is officially Apple's first games console, and the fact that it ships with a suboptimal controller and last year's mobile chipset is a bit of a concern, especially when competing products, Nvidia's Shield Android TV specifically, offer a much more powerful box with a proper controller in the package. It's difficult to avoid the feeling here that Apple is treating gaming as some sort of optional bolt-on extra here. Obviously in the long run it'll be the quality and quantity of the games that makes the difference, but with the remote especially we feel that the developers have a real challenge on their hands making games work well. Anyway, that's all we have for now. Please do give us a like if this video was of use to you, and remember to subscribe to Digital Foundry for more. Thanks for watching.